Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Shakri from the Contra Costa County Bar Association. I am the Development Education Manager. Thank you all for joining us today. I just wanted to remind you that the closed captions are on the bottom of the Zoom page. You can turn them off or on, however you like. And a reminder that this meeting is recorded. If you have any questions, you can email me directly at the end um, of the Zoom. And I will pass it on to Jordan from Smokeball. Thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, to today's MCLE, the Attorney's Guide to AI Prompt Writing. And we'll just dive in, but right before we do, as a little bit of a thank you, Smokeball, we've been doing these raffles, which is very exciting. So your odds are very, very good right now. 1 out of 13 people is going to win this $100 Amazon gift card. So if you want to enter, all you have to do is just put in your information. We're going to post that link in the chat if you do not want to write down that very long SurveyMonkey link. So we'll put that in the chat. You can click on that, get yourself entered. I'll put this back up towards the end of today's CLE, just to remind you, just in case more people join, but hopefully they don't, odds-wise, for you. So you can enter it there by clicking that link in the chat. But yeah, 1 in 13 chance, not too shabby. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So I will be answering your questions live. We're doing it live, and I will do that at the very end of today's MCLE. So probably the last 5 minutes or so, I will go through those questions. So just pop those in the chat, or if you see that Q&A box on Zoom, sometimes it's hidden behind that more button, but you can put those questions into the Q&A box too. I'll get to them either way, chat, Q&A, and I will answer those at the very end. A little bit about me before we get started. My name is Jordan Turk. I am a practicing family law attorney down in Austin, Texas. So, you know, all the drama all the time, especially around the holidays when no one can figure out what their possession schedule actually is, or they just never cared in the first place. So it's always fun. It's always fun when your Thanksgiving and your Christmases really aren't your own. But anyway, we're establishing healthy boundaries. But in addition to being a family law attorney, I'm also the legal technology advisor at Smokeball. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Smokeball, or if this is your first interaction with us, you know, first of all, welcome. We're an all-in-one cloud-based practice management system for attorneys. Say that 5 times fast. What does that even mean? So this means that we help you manage all of your day-to-day, both legal and administrative tasks. So think case management, billing, three-way trust accounting, timekeeping, document automation, calendaring, pretty much every single thing that you could possibly need to run your firm. We have it for you. It's one login. You don't need a million integrations. It's just there waiting for you. So we also enable you to do things like track your time, but I say that in a very specific way. So I was a terrible person in Timekeeper at my prior firm. It was just something that I was never focused on, and which obviously cost me money and cost the firm money. And I just, you know, you work 10 to 12-hour days, you forget to log your hours, you lose your time, right? You're trying to recreate it. So what Smokeball saw was this need, right? And it was Smokeball was created by attorneys for attorneys. And so essentially it's just a piece of software that exists in the background of your computer that's logging exactly what you're doing, on what case, and for how long. So if I spent 2 hours drafting a decree in the Smith matter, at the end of that day, it's going to say, here's a timesheet entry. Would you like to add that to an invoice? Reflecting that 2 hours on the Smith matter. So it just enables you to accurately track all of your time, so you're not having to recreate it at the end of every month like some of us had to do in our early days of practice, or maybe even now. It always also comes pre-built with a metric ton of workflows and forms that are specific to your state, but also specific to your particular judge and jurisdiction, because every judge is their own special snowflake and has their own special forms. So we already have those forms, they're automated and they're ready to go for you. If you want to learn more about Smokeball and also more about our AI offerings, which is very exciting, we have our own AI components and features now. We're going to have a poll at the very end of today's CLE. You can select yes, we'll reach out to you with more information on it. But this was the #1 thing that changed the course of my practice. It's why I ended up here. So I am very much an advocate for practice management software. And also, best of all, we are a CalVar Connect partner, so that means that you get a 10% discount on our software. That is a huge deal. We're going to post that link in the chat if you want to learn more about it, or you can scan that fancy schmancy QR code, and that'll take you to the landing page, and you can learn more about the partnership there. All right, here's just a little taste of what we're going to talk about today. So if you do not know what generative AI is, I'm going to go over that very, very briefly, just to kind of lay some groundwork for you and things to watch out for, minor little ethical things to also watch out for when you're getting into prompt writing and you're getting into exploring generative AI. And then we'll talk about prompt engineering or prompt writing, how attorneys historically used it. When I say historically, I mean like 2 years ago, because things have gotten a little crazy since then, right? Technology expands exponentially, and definitely in the realm of generative AI, that is true. And so I'll talk about how attorneys kind of used it before, how they're using it now, how they're refining it now, how they are refining specific prompts that are, specific to their law firms and to their practice area. Talk about tone and how to correct that using generative AI. Talk about how that looks in a practice management setting. I'll also get into a live demonstration of generative AI via ChatGPT too. So you can see what we're doing in real time. So maybe it'll be a little less intimidating for you to kind of, navigate the waters of generative AI. All right, so what exactly is generative AI? So it's the hot new, it's the new kid on the block. It's the hot new term. So an easy way to think about generative AI is comparing it to extractive AI. So extractive AI is AI that finds relevant results within existing data. That sounds like a bunch of words, but what does it mean? So think about Lexis, think about Westlaw Fastcase, right? You're finding relevant results within existing data. It's not creating new data. I'm looking for a case that contains XYZ, and that's what it's going to give me, right? Nothing more, nothing less. I'm wanting this particular statute. Perfect, here it is. Here's the citation. It's not creating anything new for me, no new content. It's not drafting anything for me. It's just giving me results based on the data that it has. So that is extractive AI. So the new kid on the block, right? Generative AI is something completely different. So this is what it's creating brand new content from this existing data. So it's kind of doing the opposite, actually, of extractive AI. And considering that, our profession is based on words and document creation, this technology is potentially very powerful. The attorneys that are adopting generative AI are, doing it with, or I would say doing it with zeal, and it's because it's helping out so many attorneys, and we'll talk about that too. So generative AI, great. It creates brand new content from existing data. Fantastic. But how does it actually work? So generative AI, as it exists today, is simply a predictive text software. So it's just predicting the next word in a series of words. So for instance, if I asked you, or if I asked generative AI, Mary went to the grocery store to buy a dozen blank. Our brains immediately know that's likely eggs, right? Dozen eggs. And so generative AI, by scraping the internet and consuming all of this content, they call it large language models, and we'll talk about that in a second, but by consuming all of this content, so think about anything that's freely available over the internet. ChatGPT is just consuming it, and then it knows, because it's consumed all of this content, it too knows that the next word in that sentence is eggs. So that's how it started. It was just a text prediction software. So just by virtue of that, obviously it's not going to replace the kind of sophisticated legal analysis, right, that we're trained to do, at least not yet. It can definitely help, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, but I wouldn't be so scared right now about it taking your job. I think it's kind of like document automation in that way. A lot of attorneys, when document automation came out, and that's what Smokeball cut its teeth on. Document automation came out, a bunch of attorneys, a bunch of staff were like, oh my gosh, this is going to put me out of a job. It's basically populating this entire document for me. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired. But in reality, what happened was it's just making law firms and attorneys more efficient. So it's reducing human error. It's giving you more free time back in your day. Nobody is losing their jobs. They just have a little bit more room to breathe now. And I think AI is kind of the same. I don't think anybody's necessarily going to lose their job, in the legal profession, but I do think that it's going to make life a lot easier for you and for your staff. So just keep that in mind as we talk about generative AI. And I'll get into LLMs real quick too. So LLM, right, as we attorneys understand it, it's no longer an advanced law degree. So push that out of your mind. And LLM is now going to stand for large language model. So these are the texts that generative AI is based off of. So again, think about anything freely available over the internet. This AI is consuming that data, and then it's using that data to predict its own text. So to write its own content, to write an email for you, to write a blog post for you, right? And it can because it's consumed so much content. And you might think, oh, isn't this a problem? Because is it consuming content that it shouldn't? Is it consuming copyrighted works? Is this an issue? And the answer is yes. So there's quite a few lawsuits out right now, especially from authors whose works were on the internet, but they never gave permission for it to be used, in data mining or data scraping for generative AI. So they are suing a bunch of the AI companies saying, we never gave you permission. This is protected work. So that's moving through the court system right now too. There are a few other lawsuits with regard to that, where people say, hey, I haven't granted you permission. I think Meta, there's no lawsuit against them because they were using pictures that they weren't supposed to. They never got, clearance to do that by the users. So things like that. There's a lot of things that are happening right now in the world of generative AI when it comes to protected work. So kind of stay tuned for that. But just imagine you now have this program that combs the depths of the internet, consumes countless books, and then it uses that to generate its own unique output. Pretty incredible, and lawyers are using it wonderfully so far. And it's only getting smarter and more sophisticated. So GPT, when it first came out, we're talking years ago, wasn't that sophisticated, right? It wasn't predicting that much. It was maybe giving you a line or two, but now it can give you entire stories, entire books, things like that. But it is getting also more sophisticated. So not only has it now passed the bar exam, it's also passed the MPRE. It's a little bit of a misnomer when you see these headlines, right? So one says latest version of ChatGPT aces bar exam with score nearing 90th percentile. Don't take that, at face value, because the people that were running that study compared that against people that were multiple test takers for the bar. So, if you took the bar exam 2-3 times, right, the pass rate's going to be a lot harder, to get to. Usually it dips. I mean, in Texas, I think it dipped to a 30% pass rate if you took it more than once, right? And so they're comparing it against that, and that's where they got the 90th percentile. So not quite accurate, but it still did pass, and it still did pretty well, and it also still has now passed the MPRE. So getting started with AI, a lot of attorneys are like, okay, I want to try it, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started. Where should I go? I would say, unless your practice management system has AI in it, so like Smokeball does, MyCase does, Clio does, if you do not have a practice management software or you don't have access to the AI component, go to ChatGPT. So type ChatGPT into Google, create a free account. It is completely free. We'll talk about some words of caution and confidentiality concerns in a second, but just create a free account and start playing around with it. It's kind of like muscle memory for a lot of this stuff, especially for prompt writing. So the more you get used to it, the better off you're going to be. And there's also, ChatGPT isn't the only player in the game that's free generative AI software. You have things like Claude, which I think is Amazon's offering for it. There's Bard, which I think is Google's offering. There's Hugging Face. So don't feel like you're hemmed in by ChatGPT and by its parent company, OpenAI. You have plenty of options if you don't want to use ChatGPT. To me, it's just the easiest one to kind of dip your toes into the water with. Okay, so a word of caution as you dive into the world of generative AI and prompt writing. Hallucinations, not fun. So for those who aren't familiar, the biggest problem that generative AI poses right now is the fact that it kind of lies to you. And sometimes it lies to you with reckless abandon. Even if you ask it to not lie to you, it will. So part of the problem with generative AI is that it wants to please you so badly that it wants to give you the answer that you want so badly that it will lie to you. Even if you ask it nicely to not, it absolutely will. So just keep that in mind in the back, and just keep it in mind when you're drafting things, when you're utilizing things for your law office. AI just wants to please you. You cannot take its output at face value. It will lie to you, especially if you're asking for legal specific things. And so unless you're utilizing a legal specific program like Lexis, like Westlaw, or like your practice management software, things like that, there are really no guardrails in place when it comes to utilizing like ChatGPT or Claude if you're asking it for a legal specific question. And the problem is it will pop up with case law for you. So if you're asking for case law that's on point for a brief that you're drafting, do not do it. Because if you do, GPT and Claude, they'll generate these cases that look very much legitimate. citation looks good. They'll actually give you a whole opinion. If you ask for the opinion, they'll give you the holding of the case, right? The problem is it's fake. It's all made up. Just be very, very careful on these free platforms like ChatGPT, like Claude, like Bard. Be very, very careful when you're utilizing them, especially for legal specific questions. Just do not do it. And here's some problems that attorneys have run into with that. So last year, a lawyer in New York, a lot of us have heard of this story or heard of this case. It's very sad and mortifying. But so an attorney went into court, and the judge and opposing counsel started looking at their brief, and they were like, "These cases I don't think exist." You know, they started questioning it. And so the judge talked to the attorney and said, "Hey, can you please double check these citations?" Because the attorney, turns out, had gone to ChatGPT, asked it for these cases, and input them into his brief. So the judge is telling the attorney, "Hey, go just double check these, please." So they take a break. The attorney, instead of going to Lexis or going to Westlaw or Fastcase, instead just goes back to ChatGPT. And you can see in here, he just asks ChatGPT, "Hey, is Varghese a real case?" "Yes," ChatGPT said, "it is a real case." The attorney then asked for its source. The chatbot again claimed that the false case was real. And then if you look, the ChatGPT gives a citation that looks legitimate. And it says it does exist. It can be found on Westlaw or Lexis. I apologize for any inconvenience or confusion my earlier responses have caused. So this attorney then took that, went back into court, said, "Oh, judge, yes, these are legitimate cases." Obviously, judge is not happy with that. He was sanctioned $5,000. And there's another one, something in the water, with New York. But there was another case that happened where a lawyer used ChatGPT to research stuff for a medical malpractice lawsuit and didn't double check the citations and was also sanctioned, I believe. There's one, which I guess is not surprising. Michael Cohen said he unwittingly sent AI-generated fake legal cases to his attorney, and too many attorneys using ChatGPT. And then also that'll be in a couple slides. I'll mention that too. The biggest problem that you're going to find with attorneys when you're utilizing this free type of software like ChatGPT, so we're going to talk about prompt writing with ChatGPT and with other types of software, the thing to keep in mind with it is confidentiality concerns. So anything that you put into these free tiers of software is free game for the internet and free game for the generative AI to take, to consume, and to learn from. So, right, that's an issue if you are putting sensitive client information in there, right? Because now it's being consumed and there's a confidentiality issue. You're also maybe a waiver of privilege issue, things like that. So just be very careful. If you're utilizing this for case-specific questions, redact the pertinent information, change names, things like that. Be very careful with what you're putting into these because it's an open source software. So be careful. Samsung workers kind of learned this the hard way. A lot of software engineers have been using generative AI to help them with their code, whether it's to double check code or to give them new code, things like that. So they found out pretty early on that generative AI could be, a boon for them. The problem was they were going into ChatGPT, they were going into these free software, and they were putting in proprietary Samsung code into this software and saying, "Hey, fix this," or "Hey, what can I do about this?" Obviously, that is a huge problem for Samsung because you can't recall that, right? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube once that happens. So now Samsung has disciplined those workers, and now it actually has its own in-house generative AI program to prevent this from happening in the future. Oh, here's another one that's actually very sad. Well, I mean sad, but I guess anger-inducing. I don't know. But so this is happening in Colorado. There was an attorney who pulled cases from ChatGPT, put that into his MSA, and the court just said this doesn't look right, and so the court's asking him questions about it, and clearly there's an issue, and then the attorney kind of starts, dawns on the attorney, "Oh no, did I just mess up?" So in orange here is a text conversation between the attorney and his paralegal. And the attorney says, "I think all of my case sites from ChatGPT are garbage. I can't even find the cases in Lexis." Paralegal, "Did you not check them after it gave them to you?" Ever the voice of reason. Attorney, "No, like an idiot." Paralegal, "Are you going to withdraw it?" Attorney, "I have no idea what to do. I'm trying to find actual case law in our favor now to present to the judge. I don't have time for this, ... That attorney got suspended for 6 months. There's another one where it was a pretty, and y'all might have, being Californian, y'all probably heard about this. There was a pretty high profile LA eviction law firm. It was caught faking cases in court because it was drawing them from ChatGPT. It's just happening everywhere. So as I said, just understand the dangers of an open system. If you aren't using legal specific software, like, Westlaw has co-counsel, things like that, that's its AI component. So it's a more, there are more guardrails in place for software like that, so to save you from an open system, right? Or if you have like a practice management software, like, so for instance, Smokeball AI does not share your data with any third party. And that's pretty much all these legal specific AI, generative AI softwares should be the same way, where they're not sharing your data, they're not sharing your questions, your answers, things like that. So just be careful when you're vetting these AI providers and you really want to start using it for case specific questions for your law firm and you don't want to have to redact things, right? Ask if they share information with a third party, ask about their guardrails that they have in place. All right, so getting into all of that. So all of that, I did not mean to scare you. So I say all of that to make you understand that there are a little bit of dangers in it, which I think turn a lot of attorneys off. So we're already very reticent to adopt any type of new technology already. Statistically, attorneys are like 10 years behind those in other fields. So that's very fun for us. We're just kind of we're just a very paranoid bunch, I feel, at least I am. So I say all that when I'm talking about hallucinations and when I'm talking about you need to double check your citations, I say all that's not so that you get scared, but so you have knowledge and so you have the power of having this knowledge so that when you go in to start using it, you're doing it correctly. So you don't have to look back on it and say, oh no, what did I do when I was learning the ropes of generative AI? Have I risked my bar card? So I just want you to keep that in mind in the back of your mind as you get into prompt engineering. Thousands of attorneys are utilizing the software and they're doing it properly. So do not worry about it. I think a lot of us just we wring our hands too much and we get anxious about new technology. This is, to me, the wave of the future. More and more attorneys are going to use this. It doesn't do anybody good to kind of stick your head in the sand with it. Again, it's not going to put you out of a job. It's not going to completely change the face of legal as we know it, but your colleagues that are using it are going to get more clients. They're going to become more successful. They're going to grow their firm at a faster pace. And so they're just going to be more competitive than you at the end of the day. Same with document automation. It's not a requirement. You don't absolutely need it to practice, but the attorneys that have adopted it know how much of a game changer it was for their firm. So same with generative AI. Okay, so prompt engineering or writing, what is it exactly? So it's really just the practice of designing and refining these prompts for generative AI. So in our case, it's the questions that we're asking, the instructions that we're giving it, any type of contextual information like, hey, pretend you're a judge, and this is what I want from you, things like that. We're utilizing that to effectively communicate with the application. That's it. And it's the way that you craft these questions. The output of generative AI is only as good as the questions that you ask it. So if you ask it these huge global questions with no context, you're not going to get the answers that you want. And that's why you are here today. And more importantly, too, when you're going into this, prompt writing is universal pretty much for every generative AI software. So the skills that you learn right now, typing into ChatGPT, same skills that you're going to want for co-counsel if you're using Westlaw, same skills that you're going to want if your practice management software has generative AI. It all kind of functions the same when it comes to prompt writing. So you'll be able to take this and apply it to any generative AI program that you want to use. Right, so why should you care? Just like what I said, what you get out of AI is what you put into it. So a bad prompt is not going to give you what you want. You're going to get frustrated and then you're going to say, why do I need to use generative AI? Anyway, I give up. So don't do that. And then you'll have, like I said before, advantages over your peers. We've already seen it here in Smokeball with those that have adopted our software. I'm sure Clio would say the same thing about their generative AI program. I think that's called Clio Duo. My case has My Case IQ. So same types of things, right? I'm sure the other software companies are seeing the same kind of rise in AI, and the attorneys that use it get it and love it. So it just saves you a ton of time, saves you a ton of energy, and you don't need any type of formal training. You just have to open a ChatGPT account or open up your practice management software. So how attorneys use prompts before. So again, I'm going to reference ChatGPT a lot in here, but again, same thing. If you can interchange it out with Bard and with with Claude, things like that. So just keep it in mind. So how attorneys used to use used to use generative AI, which I mean used to use 3 years ago when it kind of came out. But first of all, one of my favorite things to use it for, and I still do, is ideation. So for instance, I asked GPT to give me a good opening argument for a contested custody case in a divorce case. And so it does. It gives me this whole thing about, ladies and gentlemen of the court, esteemed members of the jury, in your honor. Today we gather here to address the painful reality of a broken bond, to navigate the stormy waters of a contested divorce. Obviously, that's very flowery, right? But it's a good start. When it's 10 p.m. the night before your hearing or the night before your trial, and you've prepped all of your exhibits and your eyes are bleeding and you just want to go home to maybe grab 3 hours of sleep, but then you remember, oh, I have to do an opening argument. This is a great way to start that off so that you don't have blank page syndrome, which a lot of us are familiar with that. It's a lot harder to create something original rather than just edit something that you have. And especially when you are already at the 11th hour before trial and there is no more creative bone in your body, you're just ready to get it done. This is perfect for that. But you see, you can also refine this, and we'll talk about how to refine your prompts. So for instance, it mentioned members of the jury. And while Texas does allow for some jury trials in family law cases, which is crazy, it's about as crazy as you would think. Let's say that this is a bench trial. So then I could follow back up with ChatGPT and say, hey, it's a bench trial, please remove all references to the jury. I could also say, hey, this language is too flowery. Please make it more professional. Please make it more compelling. I represent defendant in this case. I represent plaintiff or petitioner in this case. Please make it more compelling. I want to win the jurors to my side, or I want to win the judge to my side. So you can do all of this and just keep refining these prompts too, which is really fun. Also, blog posts are a pretty big deal with this for prompt writing and for generative AI. So for instance, I asked, can you give me a 600-word blog post on custody evaluators? And it did it, and it's actually pretty good. And so you can even follow up with it again and say, okay, my website person gave me a list of search engine optimization of SEO terms. I could go in and say I had 10 terms that I should include into my blog posts. I can go into GPT, I can go into generative AI, into these programs and say, okay, here's this blog post. Please incorporate the following 10 words. And it'll do it, and it will do it to where it makes sense. So pretty powerful stuff, especially if you've just been dreading updating your website because it's the last thing you want to do after you have a 12-hour workday. I get it. GPT can help you with that. And then just drafting, which is a big thing that we'll see today, and I'll show you in real time. I'll open up ChatGPT and I'll open up another program so you can see it in real time. But I've asked it, can you draft an email about the discovery process to a client? And it did it. And again, it's very, very good. So when you're thinking of generative AI and you're thinking of this content, start thinking about it like it's a starting point for you. Here, I'm not even being super specific. So this output is all right. It's way more impressive than I thought it would be, but it's going to require a lot of edits from me. So again, the more precise and specific and detailed you can be in the prompts, which I'll go through with you, the better output you're going to get. All right, so getting into prompts, some keys before we dive in. One, be precise. So what exactly are you wanting? Are you wanting help with an email to opposing counsel? Are you wanting help to draft an email to the court clerk saying that they need to stop being a lawyer and that they need to accept your filing, as mandated by law? Not that I have any problems with that, obviously, but you can specify that. So you'll specify that in the prompt, right? So you'll say, email to opposing counsel, email to the court clerk, I'm an attorney. So things like that, you'll just be as precise as possible. And context is key, right? So are you a lawyer or just a regular person in this scenario? Are you the judge? So you're putting that into the prompt too. Hey, I'm a lawyer. I'm wanting help writing an email to opposing counsel about a, depo date. So things like that, be as specific as you can possibly be. Manage biases and fairness. And we'll talk more about tone and biases in a little bit, But basically, if you hate opposing counsel, you can put that into the program and say, I detest opposing counsel. Please make this email as professional as possible. And generative AI will do a very good job with that too. So it's nice that you can recognize it and you can say, I hope opposing counsel dies in a fire, but it's not necessarily going to put that in the email that it drafts for you, if that makes sense. We'll go through it and then just iterate and refine. So again, it's just almost like practice, practice, practice on the next one. All of this is really about muscle memory. And so the more that you play around with it, the more prompts that you put into it, the more that you refine those prompts, the better off you're going to be. So it'll just be the next time you need to draft an email to opposing counsel, it'll take you 10 seconds to type that into generative AI and you're good to go. So do's and don'ts, be specific. So again, instead of saying discuss corporate law, not that specific, right? You'd say instead, what are the implications of the recent amendments to the Delaware General Corporate Law for mergers and acquisitions? Say that 5 times fast, but you see how specific that is. And then, for instance, you can do things like incorporate legal terminology. So instead of saying, how do I handle a lawsuit? Maybe you're more concerned about a jury trial. So you're going to ask, what are the best practices for conducting voir dire in a complex criminal defense trial? Also, I'll die on the hill that it's voir dire and not voir dire. That just sounds weird. So I'm going to die on that hill. But you see how you get more and more specific as you go along, right? That's really it. A lot of people just mess up and give up on generative AI because they're asking these huge global questions instead of the ones that they need to be asking with regard to their case. Also, you can get really creative with what you use generative AI for. So for instance, on this one, I just did a screenshot of a website, put it into the software and said, hey, software. So this, at this point, this is ChatGPT. I said, you are a marketing expert. Review this picture of a website and evaluate whether it communicates a luxury brand that would appeal to a high-end client and family law matters. And if not, how would you change it to capture that target? And so you'll see this was its response was on the right, and it actually is a very good response as far as the color scheme that needs to be changing, the imagery that should change, the type of font that should change. So you can really get super creative with how you're utilizing generative AI. But again, the prompt is the important thing. Pretend you're a legal marketing expert. Review this picture. Does it communicate a luxury brand? What can I do to make it communicate this, right? That's a very specific prompt. And then this too. So you can also do things like upload documents. So here's just a formal opinion by the ABA. So you can upload this document and then say, okay, summarize it. So it summarized it. And then you can ask, hey, ChatGPT, or in this case, Claude, say, list and summarize any opinions by the ABA or that the state relied upon in this opinion. And so it'll pull out all of the things that it relied upon in that ABA opinion. So especially maybe if you have a brief, or if you're reviewing an opposing counsel's brief, you can upload it and just say, hey, pull out all the case law in here, things like that. So very handy. Just more prompt ideas to play around with. Obviously, we're not going to go through all of these, but just something to keep in mind, because again, it's just more about how much detail and context you can give that generative AI program. And this is just how real attorneys are utilizing AI. So here's some real examples. This is from a colleague of mine in Oregon who does criminal defense. So he went into, I think this is AI assistant. Yeah, so this is a different company, but he went into this program and asked it. He uploaded a pleading and he said, what are the claims for relief pled here? And it actually does a very good job of pulling those out, separating them, and then giving it to you in a nice, aesthetically pleasing way. There's also another one where this is ChatGPT 4. He uploaded a copy, I think it's an MSJ, or no, it's a depo. So he uploaded a depo. He redacted all of the pertinent information though, obviously, because again, this is GPT in an open source format. But he uploaded this depo and he told GPT, you are the witness in the attached deposition. What do you know about the claims made by the high school student? And again, it actually does a very, very good job of summarizing the depo, giving him an answer. There's another one, this is Claude, that he was playing around with. So he asked Claude, he uploaded an MSJ, and he asked Claude and said, you're representing defendant at trial in the case described in the attached memo. So the thing that he uploaded. Write an opening statement that would take approximately 15 minutes to deliver. Focus on the motivations behind the decisions made by the defendant, i.e. protecting kids and other staff members from COVID and complying with the state's vaccine mandate for schools. You see, that was very, very specific. And so what he got was a very specific opening statement. And if you timed it, it would be about 15 minutes, which is lovely. Especially for me, a lot of judges put us on time limits for our openings and closings for family law. So this is kind of perfect too. All right, and then talking about tone. So, for instance, I wrote here, received this letter from opposing counsel. Quote, we will not appear for a deposition. Your client is a jerk and I'm seeking sanctions. Reply respectfully and tell them that appearance is required and encouraging cooperation. And so it drafted this entire email for me. So instead of me just going ballistic on opposing counsel, right? Sometimes we draft those letters. We have to, and before we hit send, we have to step away. We have to grab a coffee. We decompress, we go back to our desk, we delete that email, and then we write a more professional one. So instead of having to do that and take time out of your day, you can just ask generative AI to change your tone for you. So, hey, please make this more friendly. Please make this more formal. Please make this more professional. So it's very nice. Again, instead of saying, I hope you die in a fire and how did you get a law degree? Generative AI can change that for you, soften it for you, but still make it professional. And you can do good things like retainer agreements. So I uploaded the retainer agreement, or what I usually put for my retainers. This is a fake case, obviously. And I said, hey, draft a fee agreement that's to serve as an engagement letter with this client that indicates the terms of this letter. And so I want it incorporating all the terms of my original fee agreement, but my original fee agreement isn't that pretty. So I had Claude, I think this is Claude. I had Claude do it for me. I did not ask it to break it down this way. I did not ask it to bold anything, right? It just did it on its own in an aesthetically pleasing way, which is lovely. And then at the end of the day, don't be afraid to experiment with these programs. So I'm going to open up really quick. I'm going to open up ChatGPT and I'm going to show you what we're working with here. I think I have to exit out of the slideshow. Hold please. All right, so let me screen share my computer here. I say optimistically, like I know what I'm doing. All righty, so let's screen share. Here we go, screen one. Yes. All right, so you should see ChatGPT open here. This is just the regular old free account. So you'll see here chatgpt.com up top. So now you can go in and just start playing around with it, right? So instead of, let's talk about maybe the things that I hate to write the most, which would be anything related to discovery. I am not a fan. I understand that discovery is necessary, a necessary evil, I think in a lot of cases, but I hate dealing with it. Hate dealing with opposing counsels that never get it, and hate dealing with clients who give me the opposite of what I ask for. So it's just kind of the bane of my existence. But generative AI can help you here. So for instance, you can say things like, maybe opposing counsel has objected to each and every single question, which, yeah, never happens, especially in family law. But that means that I got no answers to my request, right? So it's pretty much just all objections. So I want to draft an email to opposing counsel, basically saying, hey, you're delaying this case. Just respond to the frickin' discovery question. So if you wanted to be global about it, so let's say you didn't really know much about prompt writing, you didn't know that you needed to be specific. So I could say, draft an email to opposing counsel about his client's lack of response or their objections to my discovery requests. Hope you can't hear me typing. I'm a very aggressive typer. It was pointed out to me in law school, and now I get weird about it. All right, so you'll see I said draft an email to opposing counsel, and you'll see it even gives you a subject line, follow up to your opposing counsel's aim. So you see it gives you all of this information. And so I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing regarding the discovery requests I served on your client on dates requests were served. As of today, I've not received any responses or objections to these requests. So that's not quite right though, but it's because I gave a very global kind of question. I wasn't very specific about it. So that's why it's kind of wrong on a couple things and I have to double check it. So what I can say instead is, again, just being as specific as possible. So say I am a lawyer. And then let's say opposing counsel responded to discovery and objected to every single question. And you'll get better and better at this as you go along too. So an objective every question, this means, like I just said before, this means, let's say I got no substantive answers to my request, because it's just how opposing counsel is. And then I say, could you please, I always say please, because the robot overlords will someday come for us, and hopefully I will not be the first in line to be killed. So I always ask nicely. But could you please draft an email to opposing counsel telling him he is delaying this case and must withdraw his objections, let's say ASAP, or I will file a motion to compel. So it's almost like instructions that you would give to your assistant or to your paralegal, right? And so see how much more specific I was, and now I get a way more specific output from generative AI. So dear, and subject line is also changed in proper discovery objections. Dear opposing counsel's name, I'm writing regarding your client's responses to my requests. After reviewing the responses, I see that your client has objected to every single request without providing any substantive answers. Such blanket objections are improper under the, applicable code that you do. These tactics unnecessarily delay the progress of the case and are inconsistent with the principles of fair and efficient discovery. Unless your client withdraws these objections and provides full substantive responses by, then it says, give a reasonable deadline, I will have no choice but to file a motion to compel and seek appropriate relief from the court, including sanctions if warranted. I trust that you will address this matter promptly to afford further escalations. Please let me know if you'd like to discuss this further. So you have this, and actually that's a pretty good letter. But let's say again, you hate this opposing counsel. And again, you can't say, how do you have a law degree? I absolutely abhor your entire existence. So instead of saying that, you can type into your generative AI program and say, I severely loathe opposing counsel. Can you make this email less friendly? And so you'll see here, it even changes up to the subject line, right? So before, you'll see before the subject was improper discovery objections, but I've just said how much I dislike opposing counsel and I want to make it less friendly. So now it'll say the subject is baseless discovery objections, right? And then it says your client's discovery responses are completely or entirely unacceptable. Objecting to every single request without providing a single substantive answer is not only improper under applicable rule, but also a transparent attempt to delay this case. So, right, it's just because, again, the more specific that you can give it, that you can be with it, the more guidance that you could give it, the better output you're going to get. If I typed in here, can you make it less threatening? Absolutely. And it would do that for me, but it would still do it in a professional way, which is very interesting, right? It kind of understands a lot of this generative AI programming understands nuance when it comes to that, which is really cool at the end of the day. So you can go back and forth with it, but ChatGPT is probably the standard one that I would say play around with it, unless your practice management software has it, because then it's just easier to go into your practice management software. But this is probably the biggest thing that I use it for is drafting emails. And I'll show you more about that in a sec too, but that's the biggest thing for me. And then actually, oh, we have time. I'll just show you that right now then. Hang on. Here we go. So I will show you what this looks like in a practice management software. So again, if you have, this is just Smokeball because, hey, I work here. But if you have Clio, if you have MyCase, I don't know if the other heavy hitters have their AI program out yet, but I promise you they probably will. I think everybody's developing their own. So if you have those programs, contact them and ask to be added to their beta or ask to have a free trial or something of your generative AI software for these practice management systems so you can kind of see what's going on. But as far as how it works when it's integrated into your practice management system. So this is just Smokeball. This is just a case that I've opened up. It's Elizabeth Johnson. It's a divorce case. And so we have all of our case information. Typically every document in the case is going to be here in this little document repository section that we have here. And so if you go over to Archie, which is our AI program, think of it as this program, this generative AI software, now has access to every single thing that's ever been done in your case. So every pleading has been uploaded. Every email to and from opposing counsel has been saved down into the file, right? Because they allow you to save it automatically, instantaneously when you send it. You know, any document that's been filed, any pleading, all of it's already here, and it's in your practice management system. So now think about Archie as your Matter assistant. So now I know that it's consumed all of that data, every single piece of data with regard to my specific case. And now I can ask it questions about that specific case. So maybe I'm drafting a final decree of divorce, and final decrees typically require that I put the date of marriage, which of course I do not remember, and we only ever take it intake, and then we kind of forget about it for the whole case because it's usually inapplicable depending on the type of divorce case that you have for Texas. And so if I don't want to go back and look through my files and try to figure it out, I can just ask it and say, what's the date of marriage for the parties? So these little things that normally you would have to go and you would either have to farm out to an associate or you'd have to ask a legal assistant or you yourself would have to go back through your files, you can now ask generative AI. So I said, what's the date of marriage? Date of marriage, September 12th, 1999. Okay, well, cool. Now I'm still going through the decree and I need to know when the children age out because that will affect child support. So maybe I'll ask, when do the children turn 18? Because that will be pertinent information for me for family law. And then it'll say, Bobby turns 18 on 2018 or turned 18 2018, and Jamie turned 18 in 2020. And then it'll give you the citations for that too. So I know that the kids have already aged out. And then you can do things like if you haven't touched a case in a long time, or you have a heavy docket. At one point I had 40 cases to myself and I wanted to die. So you're trying to refresh your recollection on a lot of these cases. So you can go in here and ask, can you give me a summary of this case? And so it's going to give me a summary. Here's the parties, here are the children, the grounds for divorce, here are the key issues in the case and what's been happening. Oh, and then it tells me that a marital settlement agreement has been filed. So I can say, so if I look at this marital settlement agreement, actually, I can look at that. I can preview that file if I want. I'll click on the doc file because I'm dumb. Here we go. So I can preview that file if I want. I can also just chat with the marital settlement agreement. So let's say my client has called me and said, oh, you know what? Can you give me kind of a rundown of what's in that MSA or in that marital settlement agreement? I can ask generative AI to do it for me. So can you summarize the settlement agreement? And again, right now I'm only talking to the document. So I'm not talking to my whole case file. I just have questions about this specific document. And so here's the summary that it gives. Again, very aesthetically pleasing, which I like. But now here comes the cool stuff. So I can go and say, draft an email to the client with the above summary. Tell her she can change it in a year if agreed. So just something very simple. And so since it's already integrated into your practice management system, the cool thing about it is it already knows your client's email address. So that's already done. Subject line's already done. Email's already done. Here's the marital settlement agreement summary. Please review it. Let me know if you have questions. Additionally, you have the option to request a review and adjustment of it within a year, things like that. So you can go in, you can change the tone of that. Maybe you want to be more friendly because it's a client that you like, or maybe a little less friendly and more concise or professional if it's a client that you hate. Family law, a client that you hate, no way. But yeah, or maybe you want to change the length of it, make it longer, make it shorter. Maybe you want to check for clarity, in legal terminology. Maybe you want it to be, again, more professional. You can do all that. But then my favorite thing is you can go ahead and, since it's fully integrated, create an email from that. And it already auto-populates with everything, because again, it's already integrated into your practice management system. So all I had to do was click a button and my client's email is already there. Subject line's already there. It attaches the marital settlement agreement because that's what we were talking about. And my email's right here ready to go. And then I can send it. And since it's already, again, integrated, if you look down at the bottom here, once I send it, it gets automatically saved down into my client's case file. And so if I go back to the matter, you'll see here's the email that I just sent to my client. Since it's all one. So you'll see that. So I'm sure, I would imagine that my case has the same, I would check, but so my case has their own AI software, and then so does Clio. That's Clio Duo, I think is what that's called. So play around with this. If you have these pieces of software already, if you have Smokeball, contact me. I'll get you in on Archie, and so you can start playing around with it. But that's honestly what makes it so powerful when it comes to generative AI programs for practice management, is that it's fully integrated into your cases already. So it's a lot of fun. All right, we're about to get to Q&A real quick. So let me get you back onto these slides. Here we go. Oh, wait, no, did that wrong. Sorry, guys. Let me redo that. Oh, because I have to do this, and then I have to switch it. Here we go. I can't ever do that properly. Let's stop share, and then we're going to switch it. Here we go. Yes, and then I have to click slideshow. Stay with me, guys. Alrighty. So if you're going to take any page from today's, and if you're going to take any page from today's MCLE, this one is probably the best one that I would say to print out and have handy, or to keep it saved somewhere. We made it up. It's called our AI barcode, but it's really telling you what to do about prompt writing. So build on previous prompts, tell it to consider your audience, right? Who is this for? Is this for opposing counsel? Is this for a judge? Who are you trying to talk to? Who are you trying to persuade? Redirect when it makes sense. I want this, not that, right? Give it context. Tell it to act if it's your personal trainer or if it's a judge, right? Tell it the form of output that you want. Are you looking for a brief? Are you looking for an email? Are you looking for a blog post? Specify that. Give it direction. Do this, don't do this. Give it examples of the output you'd like. So if there's a particular brief that you're very proud of, or a particular letter that you're very proud of, you can upload it and say, as a template basically, and say, hey, here's what I'm looking for. I want it in this format, or I want it in this style. So you can be as kind of creative as you want with it, and you can be as specific as you need to be or want to be. And I already showed you what's happening with Smokeball, so we don't need to do that. So right before we get into Q&A, so again, if you have questions, put that into the chat, put that into the Q&A box, and we'll get to those in a few minutes. But I really did want to say thank you so much for having me, and thank you to Smokeball also for being here. I know AI can be a little bit scary, but legal technology is critical to the success of law firms in my eyes. So really just thank you again for being here too. And when I say critical, I mean, my life was kind of miserable, especially my first probably 5 years of practice, because a lot of it is you don't know what you don't know. I did not know that legal technology existed like this. I didn't know that case management existed. I thought, honestly, I believe that we were a very technology forward firm at the time. We probably used 8 to 10 different pieces of legal technology software, right? Like we had Ignite for file sharing, and NetDocs for file storage, and, LawPay for credit card processing. And we just had a million different pieces of software that I would have to log. Oh, and then we had Practice Master for calendaring. We had Tabs 3, I think, for billing. So we had 5 million different pieces of software, none of which really spoke to each other. And so I'd have to log in to multiple different things every day just to work my cases. Nothing spoke to each other. It was kind of a mess, right? Nobody knows what's going on in each other's cases. Getting staff on the same page was also very difficult. And putting my hours also very difficult, until I came across practice management software. And that's ultimately what brought me to Smokeball. So if you're looking for something to really take your firm to the next level and maybe dip your toes into the waters of AI or document automation and billing and automatic time tracking, I highly encourage you to look into Smokeball. So in that vein, we're going to pop up this poll real quick. Oh no, it's back in progress. So we're gonna launch that poll if we can. Maybe happening. I don't know. There we go. All right. So while that's up, it's just a question of, would you like to learn more about how Smokeball can work for your firm? If you select yes, which you should do this for every single type of legal tech software that you have, or any type of software you have at your firm, always take a demo. So when you select yes, we'll follow back up with you. We'll schedule what's called a demo, which is really just a 30-minute Zoom call where they take you through the program live. And it's catered completely to you, because what I need as a family law attorney in Texas is vastly different from what a PI attorney in California needs, right? So it'll be completely specific and catered to you. but they'll just take you through the whole program. And the thing to remember about legal technology as you go through this kind of journey of growing your firm is that if it does not make you more money or does not give you more free time back in your day, you do not need it. Why are you paying for it? So I always keep that in mind, especially when I was hanging my own shingle and I was going out and trying to figure out what my firm needed and what would make the most impact and what would hopefully just make me money at the end of the day. I took every single demo of as many pieces of software as possible, because that's really what's going to allow you to figure out what's going to be best for your firm and what really doesn't matter for your firm. Because again, everybody's different. How you run your firm is different. But I would say at a minimum, practice management software is the game changer for me, or at least, and it was for my old firm, who are now also Smokeball users. Once they figured out, oh, we could be making more money and we could also have more of a life. So as far as decreasing stress, this is really what changed the game for me, was adopting Smokeball in the first place. All right, and we can end that poll. There we go. And then just as an added benefit, I already mentioned it before, but we are a CalBar Connect benefit partner. So again, that means that you get 10% off of our software, which is a huge, huge deal. So we'll pop that link in the chat if you want to click on that and explore that, or again, scan that fancy smancy QR code, and that'll take you to the benefit page. And last chance, the odds have gone up, so it's now a 1 out of 16. Sorry, guys. One of you is going to win this $100 Amazon gift card, so we'll put that link in the chat too, so that you can just enter your information, get that figured out, or get that entered, and we usually pick the winner within a day, I think, so you'll be notified pretty quickly if you won. So the odds are very much in your favor. The holidays are right around the corner, and I'm sure everybody could use this right now. All right, so getting into questions. Let's see if there's anything here. I'm just going back up here. Let's see here. Can we get a copy of these slides? Yes. Yes, I believe, Sarah, I think, and you can address this, but I think, yes, everybody already should have gotten copies of it. You will get a copy of it once they do the follow-up emails.
Yes,
Let's see.
we will send the copy of the slides and the certificates for the MCLE after.
Beautiful, thank you. And then can you upload documents on the free version? Okay, so we're talking about, when I told you that you could upload documents on ChatGPT or Claude, depends on which application you do. A lot of them now allow it for free, where you can upload it for free. But even if you didn't, and say you still wanted to play around with it, GPT, the paid version, is only $20 a month. And that gets you unlimited questions. You get access to the better tier of GPT. So, and same with Claude, things like that. Actually, I want to say with Claude, one of the higher tiers, which I don't know the pricing structure on that, but they're all kind of similar. They're pretty low per month. But one of the tiers, actually, they say, and I've been waiting for them to get back to me with their proof on it, but they say it's HIPAA compliant. Which is a huge deal for Texas. Texas attorneys have to deal with that. We are considered a covered entity for HIPAA purposes. So for family lawyers, right, I get medical records all the time, which means that I must be HIPAA compliant and my office must be HIPAA compliant. So it's interesting that Claude is saying that now for their program. I think probably all the others will follow suit too, which is going to be, I think, really cool to see. But the more you pay, the more security you get. They don't share, generally, you'll need to double check it depending on which application you use. But generally, the paid versions, they tell you they do not share your data with third parties. So they do not consume your data. They do not use your data to train off of. So you can go and look at that too. But I think the free versions now do allow some form of documents. You're able to upload them, but they're going to limit you. So you're not going to get unlimited documents that you can upload with the free versions. But again, paid versions are like $20 a month. All righty. Well, I think, that was the only question. Well, if you have any more, or if you were a little too scared to ask, email me. My email address is jordan.turk@smokeball.com. That QR code will take you to my LinkedIn. Sometimes I post some fun things about legal technology, about lawyers in general, in my, relentless quest to have opposing counsel be nice to me. But if you, again, any questions, direct message me on LinkedIn, send me an email, jordan.turk@smokeball.com. Generative AI is so much fun once you start playing around with it. It's really just ripping the Band-Aid off and opening an account and start playing around with it. It's truly one of the coolest things that's come out probably in the past decade for legal. So I would absolutely encourage you to at least dip your toes in there and at least get a basic understanding of that and a basic understanding of prompt writing. All righty. Thank y'all so much for having me. And again, contact me if you have any questions, but y'all have a good rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you all.